welcome to the newest episode of Borderline Podcast Disorder. Um, how are you today? You had a good week. You ready for the week ahead? The weekend was it nice? Was it good? Was it bad? Uh, my end of the week last week has been pretty okay with some not so good thing happening, but that's fine. It's um yeah, things happen, and it's a lot about trying to get through those things. And I've got a lot of brilliant stuff coming up, both like personal life and the comedy podcast. With the uni, I had my first exam of the two last week, and I've got another one coming this week. And then it'll be followed by a couple of weeks of holiday, which is quite nice, and I'm so excited for that. And yeah, besides of that, again, comedy wise, it's been a busy-ish week. I got some really cool guests on the pod that I've been recording with, and I can't wait to share it with you. And then I've done a couple of shows, and actually the shows last week were pretty good, pretty good, and managed to come up with some new stuff. Um, Worked out on some older stuff, just like preparing for the 16th of April. And yeah, what can I say? That's all in all, it's tiring. I feel like I have of a lot of like soreness in my body. I think from just like being on my feet all day, and I've managed to go out and go to the gym as well, which has been really nice. And it's something that I do get to look forward to. And being a bit more active, I feel like I'm in a much better shape than I was a couple of months ago, for sure. But now I feel like the muscle soreness and stuff like this is kind of like catching up with me. And in the last few days I felt quite tired physically, and I feel like in some nights I didn't sleep much because I was just like, wake up early, day job or uni, then gig, then gym, or the other way around, or podcast, and whatever it was, and then in the days when I've managed to actually sleep, um I kind of, perhaps I slept more than I should have. But it, I don't know. I feel like after I've been almost like hibernating for a few months at the end of last year, like at the period at the end of last year and beginning of this year, and I felt just like miserable all the way through, to actually feel like I'm not just like hibernating because I don't feel good mentally and I don't want to do anything. It felt much better that I just I guess I feel tired, but I know why, because I've been doing loads of things, um yeah. And look, I think that's it now. I'm going to keep this short and simple, because again, we've been speaking quite a bit, but then this week is just one episode coming out, which is this one. And it's an episode with one of the people that I enjoy talking to the most, one of my favorite people. It's Matt Zitron. He's a comedian from London, and just a wonderful human being. It's really ever since I met him, and ever since we got to like chit chat off the stage, it's always a pleasure speaking with him. And it's been we were meant to record at the end of last year, but then a lot of life happened, and then yeah, we managed to do it now. And I hope you enjoyed the episode. He's a huge advocate for like mental health, and he's been writing some. He's been publishing some. He's published, or like some of the things that he wrote have been published, and I'll leave the link in the bio for that. And yeah, enjoy the episode, and you'll hear from me again next week. Bye now. Perfect. So, Matt, thank you for coming down to my humble abode. How are you, bro?
I'm good, man. It's nice coming down here. When I was at uni, 2002, for a short time I lived in South Woodford.
No way.
Yeah, just for a short. I was in the they knocked down now. There was halls of residence there, and my wife is originally from Loughton, so it's quite nice coming this way.
Seriously,
it's really easy to get to from Shepherd's Bush. So I have a little bit of a tie around here.
Where did you study?
Queen Mary. So I took a gap year because I'm middle class, and I have very, very kind parents. But yeah, I started at Queen Mary in 2002. Yeah, sort of the end of 2002. Fine enough, it's where I met my wife, though we didn't get together for another 5 years. I quit that in the February of 2003. There was like a rail crash in Chancery Lane. This is going back 13 years. There was a rail crash. No, not 13 years. Jesus Christ. We're going back 22 years. Fuck, why am I so old? Yeah, there was the Chancery Lane crash and all the buses got fucked. And my family lived by White City and I was living out South Woodford. Yeah. So after a while, I couldn't hack it. I didn't like being so... I was close but separated. So I left that uni because I was doing all right, but it was like business management. Yeah. And then I went off to New York and volunteered there where there was the blackout in 2003. Which again, I don't know what, I'm like a harbinger of doom. And then I went to Scotland. I went to Queen Margaret where I did 4 years doing film and media.
Interesting. Where in Scotland?
Edinburgh. So Queen Margaret is like third tier university in Edinburgh. Goes like Edinburgh, St Andrews didn't really count, but then there was like Heriot-Watt and then Queen Margaret. And what I didn't know when I started at Queen Margaret is it was the second highest ratio of female to male after the Royal Veterinary College. So if you were a single man, you could look like Quasimodo at Queen Margaret and you could pull. And then irony of ironies, I ended up in my third year after breaking up with someone back from London. But yeah, it was cool, man. It was... it's a metropolitan city, which, growing up in London, I needed. But then by the end of it, it was a bit small for me. And it's quite nice. I didn't go back to Edinburgh, funnily enough, to visit for about 17 years after I left.
Right.
I went for the festival.
Yeah.
I went up and performed. Done it 2 years in a row. So I'm not doing this year, but I did it 2 years ago. And it was really nice to be back there again and experience with my kids because they've never been. And they love it up there. So,
well, the thing about Edinburgh, which I brought up before in the podcast, is that I hate the fact that it feels like you're always either walking up a hill or down a hill.
Yeah,
and it really annoys me.
It's got a weird sort of Scooby-Doo-esque thing. Like you go down one way and you can bump into someone who you've seen miles away. Like, how the fuck did you? Because they've gone down and around.
Yeah.
I mean, it's cool. The funny thing is, if you go there for the festival, it's not a real reflection of what the place is like. It's completely different when the festival's not on.
I've never been to the Edinburgh Fringe.
Really?
Yeah.
It's madness. I sort of love it and hate it in equal spades. It's like being in London on the open mic circuit. You can't go maybe an hour walking around the city without bumping into someone from the scene in London, which is nice, but also it's everyone's jockeying for position or bums on seats and stuff. So, and this year, I don't work. My wife is very, very kind. And I didn't want to spend the money this year I'd get offered gigs. It's not like I'd be bereft of performance opportunities, but I just thought if I want to maybe do a show next year, which depending on when you're listening, this will be 2026.
It won't be that far. It's going to be maybe like in March that's coming out, but not.
Though I don't know. I'm a bit Levy, man. Like this could be big. You could be. People could be listening to this months and months after you've recorded.
Oh yeah, that's why you.
Yeah. Like I'm trying to. I'm thinking longevity. I believe in this more than you do.
I thought you don't trust me enough to put this out.
No, not at all. No, do you know what? As I've said to you before, I'm a massive Conan O'Brien fan, and he does that. He sort of says they try not to date it because you don't know when people are listening to this. They could be listening to this when either I've become more famous or more likely done a heinous crime, and I'm on the news, and they've gone, oh, I wonder if those any signs that he was going to shag all those chickens.
This will be a part of the
Yeah,
documentary.
exactly. He was a normal family man until he found the Kentucky factory. At least they're going to be killed afterwards. But anyway, yeah, with Oasis playing in the beginning of August, all the accommodation prices went up, but they've been going steadily up for years.
Yeah,
and I just sort of went, no, not this year. Going to focus on stuff. I've got some stuff I'm focusing. Can't go into details now, but I might be helping create a new night on a Wednesday in the open mic scene. Again, it's in deliberations now. Again, it's nothing huge because it's an open mic, but as you well know, if a comedian hears that their mate has got a night, yeah, you get inundated of with requests. So, but yeah, I'm looking at that, and so I'm going to focus on that in the summer. If not actually running it, we would have started it by then, but working on building it up.
Fair enough. You see, it's yeah, no, the thing with Edinburgh as well is that the reason why I haven't done the Fringe is because yeah, I started like 3 years ago, and the first I started in October, and then the first year of Fringe I was moving to London. And I was like, I can't afford, moving to London and going to Edinburgh. And then the second year, I was just, I don't know. I think I went for like a very depressive, like my first year in London was just full of like misery and sadness. So,
which is hard to believe because we get such lovely weather,
yeah,
and lovely people,
and it's so cheap as well.
Yeah,
like such an affordable place to live in. And I was just like, I hate myself. I hate everything. And then I don't even think I would have gone to Edinburgh because I don't think I had any material to like genuinely. I was struggling to write. I was struggling to do comedy. And then last year, yeah, I think that's after I was unwell physically, so I had to go through that. But again, in the future, again this year I'm not doing it either. I don't know what's the. Oh, actually, I was also out of work for a while, and yeah, I can't afford going to in the hopes that I maybe cover a loss rather than going like, oh, I'm gonna make money.
No one
yeah,
covers a loss. You go to Edinburgh, it's an investment in getting an agent. Is essentially when you do your show, that's what it is. That's the advice I've been given, that if you go up and create a body of work to get noticed, so that you can get agent work, or you can then get out of London or in London paid work, and it can be demoralizing. I've had people who had their show up there who've done all right, quite happy with it, and I supported them. And then I've seen people who just look depressed because like 2 people turned up. So, and it's no reflection necessarily on the quality of what's on.
Yeah.
But it's hard to believe that when you're the person whose thing it is. So,
but it also, I think it also sometimes plays on the, and one of the things that really annoyed me, for example, in the past years, was that the level of comics that are going, it's like big comics, like TV comics, and you're like, wasn't this meant to be for for people who are getting started? Because then now you're, like you said, it's not even it's not necessarily the again, it's not a reflection on your work, because you don't even get to display the work. Because if, say, you have a show at a time when there is like a TV credits comic doing a show, if I were to see 2 posters, regardless of how good you may sound, I'm gonna go with the TV comic, or at least most people will go with the TV comic. And then I'm like, I don't know, that's where I almost like upset me, or I was like, you know what, because sometimes you can try all this, and then it turns out that, I don't know, someone like a big name comic comes in, and then he's gonna be sold out, and then you're gonna have a squat.
So last year when I went, I I saw Four Alarms and Hog, who were, I don't know if you know them. They're this Irish sketch group. They've got lots on. They're amazing. They're professionals, but they are very, very good. And my dad had bought a ticket, but he couldn't come because he wasn't well. So I went on my own. And then I liked it so much, I said to my wife and kids, you need to go the next night. And I decided not to go with them, but I went to see Chris Ford and John Pape, who they're two comics in our area. They've been winning competitions. They're both hilarious guys. They're both gay, and that's why they did a double show. But John Pape is very much big voices on silliness, and Chris Ford is very much talking about how he used to be a Jehovah's Witness and was married to a woman, and now he's an out proud gay man. They are not only are they lovely, lovely guys, but they're very, very funny. So I went to see their show, and they were in the back of a pub. It was full, and it was great, but they're up against Four Alarms and Hog or other people is on. And I think even someone like Kate Butch, who came second in UK Drag Race or third, and she's a brilliant performer. But even she was, sorry, I'm not sure about the gender. I don't want to offend anyone. Was up against fucking huge names, and they're a massive name. So I think you have to put as much work, if not more, into the promoting and pushing of your work. But it's the game.
Yeah.
The amount of times in comedy when you're like, oh, and you realize that's just part of the game, is part of what you have to come up against. So I love it, and I'm glad I've done Edinburgh twice, and I think that's probably why this year I was like, nah, it's not for me. But I will be back. But I've got to sort of take it seriously and put on a show and write something, which I've got ideas for and I've started on. But, you've kind of got to simultaneously write that show, but keep doing your regular gigging.
Yeah.
Which is, in of itself, fucking exhausting.
Yeah. But then, you said a thing earlier, which was, I want to ask you about your dad being like in Edinburgh as well.
So my dad is massively, my dad and I are very close, very, very close. We always have been. And he's massively supportive of my comedy career. He comes to see me all the time.
No way.
Yeah, loads. And he came up the first Edinburgh to see me, but he also went and saw other shows because he liked that sort of thing, and was coming the second year, but he got it was like hospital sick. He's fine now, but he couldn't come. But yeah, he comes to see me all the time. So like tomorrow, I'm doing the King Gong at the Comedy Store, which I'm not expecting much from because you've got no leeway. But he's coming to that as well. So it is really nice how supportive he is. He told me off for having my mum in a joke, but like most jokes, it wasn't true. But I realised that I shouldn't have, so I've changed it to my mother-in-law. It's who also doesn't mind, and she wouldn't. But like, I don't want to upset my mum. But no, he's really supportive of it, and it's nice that my parents have always been very supportive of my endeavours, and my dad in particular goes the extra mile. So that's lovely.
But then we were talking about, or like you were saying about how you went to study. You studied like what was it, film and media?
Yeah. So the one I did in Scotland was film and media.
But is that when did you? So was stand-up comedy your first sort of arts form? Like sort of, again, was it your first outlet?
No. So my Edinburgh show, if I don't change it, is going to be called Patchwork Man. The idea being that through trying to decide what I've wanted to do with my life, I've gathered stories and experiences that, while they may not be a direct line to somewhere, it's created the patchwork of my life. Much like how I was just quickly talking about 2 years of my life, and it was like, I was at this uni and then I left. I went to New York and then went to Edinburgh and that sort of thing. So I was always a writer, always wrote. I used to, like at school, I used to write essays, used to win an English prize for creative writing and stuff.
No way.
And then when I sort of went for the business management course at Queen Mary because I was a lazy twat and I didn't do much schoolwork. And it was like what I could do. It was more about getting money and the idea was that I wanted to be a writer, but ADHD bullshit never got down to. and I would write articles here and there, get on press lists to do reviews. And then once I left there, left that uni, I was like, I want to do something creative. And film and media spoke to me. I wanted to work in film and media. And like my friend Greg and my friend Maisie and I did, in our final year, we did a film that it got the highest mark they'd ever been at that uni for a physical film.
No way.
So we did really well with that. It was like I'll try and find it for you. There's a little clip online. It was essentially a how-to video for a company that sells zombies for doing stuff around the house. So it'd be like, get zombies to clean.
What?
But it was this company. The company creates zombies that they can control with electricity, and you use them for around the house stuff. So I was like cleaning the kitchen, but like all of it was shit. So I like the bit when I'm putting away stuff in the kitchen, I bought a box of plates and I was literally just putting them in the cupboard and letting them fall out. But I was a zombie, that sort of thing. And we really enjoyed doing that. So my idea was, when I graduated in 2007, that I'd come back to London and try and get a job in the film and TV industry. And I got one day's voluntary work on the IT Crowd with Graham Linehan. Now, I'm not going to talk about Graham now, because I don't know him anymore, but at the time he was the most supportive, lovely man in the world. He sort of facilitated. I met him because I worked at a comic shop that he was shopping, and I asked him, and he hooked me up. And you can actually see me on an episode of the IT Crowd very briefly. It's the one where Chris O'Dowd's trying to get old ladies for a calendar. And there's a bit where he's trying to convince his old lady to take her clothes off, and it's like the middle of the street. And she starts hitting him with his bag. And if you look to the background, I sort of look around the corner because I didn't have a radio. And the other thing in that montage, there's a bit where he gets on a bus of old ladies and hands out cards. I was the one who had that idea. I was on the set. I'm standing around and I saw this bus, and I turned to the locations manager. I can't remember his name because it was many years ago. And I said, there's a bus of old ladies there. Should we try and get on? And we literally ran on. Chris O'Dowd's first, then there's the cameraman, and then there's me behind, and he's giving out these cards and I'm picking them up. Now, even though you couldn't see on screen what the cards say, they literally said, hello, my name is Roy. I want you to take your clothes off. And these old ladies are like, what's that? I'm like, it's nothing. And we just sort of rushed off the bus. And yeah, so that was fun. And then the financial crash happened at the end of 2007, I think, or beginning of 2008. And all these jobs at places like Tiger Aspect, working title, they dried up. Where it had been that you were jockeying for people who parents could sort of support them, there was half the jobs there were, and they were sort of grandfathering people up. So I couldn't do it. So I bounced around doing things, doing various different jobs. I worked in homelessness for a while, direct access hostels for men, and then like sheltered housing for men, which is insane. I once had to resuscitate a gentleman.
No way.
Lovely times. And then I sort of decided on stand-up. I'd done like once when I was 20 on a lark. But then I was about 38. So it was July 2003? No, sorry, 2023, not 2003, 2023, that I did my first gig downstairs at the King's Head.
Yes.
And then from then on, I realised it's what I like to do, what I want to do. So it took me a while, but I think a lot of the benefits of being a bit older is my perspective is better but again, it works against me because everyone's talking about Hinge and Bumble and Grindr, and I've been married 15 years.
Yeah, but I think even with that, I feel like it's actually, sometimes it's harder to, and again, that might just be my opinion, but it's harder to make these things funny because it's like it's been talked about a lot. So unless you have a very new perspective on it, then it's kind of like again, I've heard something like this before. While I feel like sometimes the more, and this is also another thing which I found quite interesting with people who start doing stand up later on, is sometimes, oh, you think, oh, this is a disadvantage, you know, because you lost on all these like years when you could have done it. But then it's actually like, well, technically you've got, you know, a lot more arsenal than, you know, someone like younger, because for better or worse, you know, you've experienced more stuff. And that's the thing with the when you talked about the economic crush, like the way I remember the economic crush is just that, you know, I remember hearing about it on the news, but without like not giving a fuck, because I was like 11, you know, and I was like, you know, okay, whatever this means. And also it was in Romania, so we kind of like got affected in like 2009, which is quite funny. Because everything is behind, you know. You're like, they're like, oh, the dollar is going down. You're like, who gives a fuck about the dollar? And then a year later, you're like, oh, there are no jobs here, you know. And you're like, oh, okay, this is why.
Is it? Have you seen Euro Trip, the film?
I don't think so.
I think it's about American teens going around Europe and stuff, and it's. I think it's regarded now better than it was at the time. But there's a bit in that. I don't know if they're in some Eastern European country, it might be Romania, and this guy pulls up in like this old car and he goes, Miami Wise, very best show, and then drives off. And it always like it's that typical thing of like behind. And I thought that was quite yeah, it I mean, it was a blessing, sort of, because it sent my life in a different direction. I wouldn't be here now. If that crash hadn't happened, but it was always hard to get those jobs. It just made it unrealistic. But you know, with the stand up, I think part of the best way of doing it now is that I'm calmer. So like, you know, in 200 something odd gigs, I've only really lost my rag the other day. That was Thursday. I did beat the blackout and I lost my rag with someone in the audience. And I think had I been younger, that had happened more often.
Interesting.
Because I've part of what, and I'm sure we'll get onto it, one of the things I've known about myself is I have an anger issue. And if I don't, and I've learned to deal with it and not be angry all the time. And I was in my 20s. But Thursday, you know, I was on later in the bill. The atmosphere at the blackout's always a bit like that. And it had been a tough day to be a Jew because, you know, the babies were being delivered back in coffins and it was all of us felt awful that day. But anyway, I got up and I was doing my material and it was going all right. And I was slightly dipping off and I'm trying to keep the flow. And there's this guy just going, card. And I lost it. I've never done it before on stage. And I just went, why don't you shut your fucking mouth? I was like, come up here and do this and see how easy it is. And then the crowd didn't like me anymore. Fair enough. I shouldn't have done it. I sort of feel bad. It's not a professional way to behave. But again, it's quite a good example of the difference between me at almost 42 and me at, you know, 22 or even 25.
Yeah, but then you're talking about how you know about like not being professional, but then you know the whole situation about like gong shows is it's not necessarily a professional environment for stand-up comedy when you know you're meant to have like you have like a script, because I think you know heckling, it's a part of the unexpected. You know,
I've handled hecklers before. I just think do you know what? I'm more trying to hold myself to a better standard. Because the thing is, you know, I'm trying to take this seriously in respect of a pathway. And as you well know, it could lead to nothing. And I'm very much acknowledging that and knowing that I can work and work and work. And the best I could get is the odd paid gig here and there, which isn't ideal. I'm not aiming for like TV. I'm not aiming for big status because firstly, that's unrealistic. And secondly, it's a surefire way to depress myself because it is so hard. I'm not saying it's out of possibility. So the realism is what I'm aiming at. It's just regular jobs. And, you know, I'm 3 years in July and it's February now. So, you know, in that time I do pick up paid gigs every so often and stuff. So I'm quite happy with that. I just need more consistency. But I don't want to fall into it's just the audience.
Yeah.
Because sometimes that is the case, and I'm sure in that case it was partly to do with it. But the only thing I can control is myself. So I won't make that mistake again. I won't go fuck off. I'll be funnier with it, like I have been every other time I've had to deal with a heckler. So it's just more because it's fresh on my mind, and because we were talking about the difference between doing it now, doing it then. It's probably quite a good example.
Interesting. Because you were talking about like the anger issues and being like a very angry person in your 20s. What do you what's the word? What do you like a visibly angry person, or what is it like when you talk about this anger? Because like I'd like, well, I've struggled with it a lot, but I've been internalizing it. So like when I talked with people around me, when I first kind of like came out and talked about how I feel, people were like, oh my god, I can't believe this. But yeah, again, my question was, were you a outspokenly angry person, or was it more of a like internalized battle?
I think it was a fair mix of both. As counsellors and mental health professionals have said to me, and as I actually understand it, is anger is just reconstituted sadness. So I knew I was sad. I knew it was like in 2013, which is the year my daughter was born, funny enough, I sort of wrote this article for Huffington Post. And if you search Huffington Post, you can find it, where I sort of came out as a depressive. I talked about how I felt and all that. And I realized that for years I was griping, moaning, and just letting things get to me. Like everything got to me. Everything wound me up. Everything made me angry. And I was never like physically violent with anyone, but I would every so often get frustrated and like punch a wall. And I remember in 2008 or 7, I was with my wife and I was angry about something and I punched a wall so hard that I got like a golf ball lump on my hand. And she went, never do that again. And I stopped. I haven't done it since. But I found this anger festering in me and I found it very hard to get rid of. This frustration, this anger, this feeling injustice everywhere. And then sort of was around COVID time, actually, I really started to properly work on it. Funnily enough, it was also around the time I started habitually using marijuana, which now I get medically for my IBS and my depression, and I find it helps an awful lot for me. But it allowed me to sort of sit back and work my head through things, like not take everything so personally, be a bit more empathetic to the situation or realistic. And then I sort of realized that being angry all the time was not helping anyone around me. I'd shout at my kids over things. I'd do this. And especially the last sort of 2-3 years, I've got a lot better at not losing my rag. Funnily enough, I lost my rag with my son today. And it was the first time I'd done it in a long time to that level. To be fair, dear listeners, he'd taken the bin out last night and he'd not put it in the bin. He put it next to the bin. So I came out this morning and the foxes had torn it open. It was everywhere over the driveway and covered in shit. So I was right to be angry. But to be fair, I just sort of like let it out and then calmed down about it. But again, it's all these wonderful examples. Yeah, it was eating at me. And I realized this anger, this sadness contributed to me also IBS developing and making it worse. I was furious. I think the sort of the point that I was like, no more, was I quit a job during COVID because the boss was horrible. He was very nitpicky. And I remember this is a great story. And it's like, it's like a dream story for anyone who works. But what happened was because it was COVID, we were still at home. My wife and I shared an office. And I sent a sales email. I'm not going to go into who this guy was or what have you. I sent a sales email, and what I tried... Steve Jobs, it was. Yeah, he'd come back from the dead at that point. It was Elon. I stopped him having his 15th child. No. What happened was I sent a sales email to someone who sent an inquiry. And what I tried to do, rightly or wrongly, is I tried to guess what they wanted. I sort of went, I know you're asking for this, but we offer this. So this boss sent me an email because I'd CC'd him and this is horrible. Call me. And I was like, took a breath to call him, and he calls me and he's like raising his voice. He goes, "We're going to go through this email word by word and see what you did wrong." I'm like, "Oh, this sounds like fun." And then as he's on the phone, I click to open said mail and he starts shouting at me, "Why are you clicking? You're not paying attention." And I just went, "Fuck your job." I literally over the phone, I went, "I'm done. You can fuck off. I will not let you speak to me about this. I won't put up with it. You know, you're being completely unreasonable." And I quit on the spot. I said, "This is my week's notice. We're fucking done," and hung up. And I was waiting for my wife to have a go at me. She was like, "Fair enough. I heard all of that. What have you?" And I realized that he had been making me feel this constant nitpicking. And like 1 minute it was like, "Oh, great, you made a sale," or "You've not made enough sales. Might have to let you go." It was always, but and once I quit that job, I was like, I need to sort of start taking better care of myself mentally. And part of that was deciding to not be as angry all the time. So,
Wow, that's a big. That's a big what do you call that? That's a big decision, that was made as a result of this. So I it sounds like there would have been a lot of thought beforehand where you're like, oh, maybe there is something that I can do, or like something that I want to do to better my not to I wouldn't say necessarily better myself, but I had to work out like this situation because it sounds awful. I get my way of dealing with my like anger, which is very often. But I also think it's like apparently it's like a borderline thing, because like when you get to feel emotions, you feel them to like the biggest extent. I usually I sometimes I'd get to like look at people and just imagine doing like the worst things to them while they are in front of me, or like while I watch I watch them on like TV or whatever. I'm just like, I can tell precisely what I want to do, what I wish I could do if it wasn't illegal.
yeah, I've had those thoughts,
Yeah.
and I've sometimes vocalized thoughts to people who aren't very nice, or what I'd like to do to them. The thing is, I have not just a responsibility to myself.
Yeah, of
I've
course.
got, my 14-year-old,
Yeah.
my 11-year-old, and my wife. And more importantly, my dog and my cat. And I need to be the best version I can be of myself right now. And I realize that because there's been points in my marriage, and I've been married 15 years past August, and we've been together 18 years this past Valentine's Day. There's been more than one occasion where my marriage has fallen apart. Like we've broken up for like a week. That was the longest week of my life. We've had times where we've gone to bed separately. Not recently. This is a while ago.
Yeah.
And those experiences have shown me that I need to be more mature. I need to be more present. I need to think more about how I'm behaving.
Mm.
So, like, sometimes it's tough because I'm obviously like the strong one in the house when people are having a hard time. But like yesterday, I was just feeling low, and I just said to everyone, "I'm fine, but I kind of need to sit with how I'm feeling. I kind of don't need to talk about it. I don't need to. I'm sad because it'd been a rough week, as I talked about before. There's been some other stuff going on that, with the kids that I'm not going to discuss because they're children. But life was heavy, and comedy can get to you as well because it's tiring, and it's my adrenaline has to get up to perform like everyone else, and with a comedian's mind, it's I don't know if anyone's listened to this, heard this, but pretty much every comic has ADHD, and it's so boring when a comic comes up and goes, "I've got ADHD." It's like, yeah, we all do. That's why we do what we do. This is cheaper than therapy, and so I've kind of had to get to this point where I've had to control my mind to a degree, not allow myself to go down bad routes, fall into black and white, like cognitive behavioral therapy. I recognize bad thought patterns and move past it. And I'm not like I'm a Zen master. I do have moments of anger, I make mistakes, all that. But it's what I'm attempting to do. And like trying to find ways that allow me to deal with feelings and deal with and be calm so I can process things. So I started doing yoga in October, and I love it. It because you have to focus on what you're doing in the group. It's quite good at clearing my mind and working through things. And like, it's one of the few things that you can do angry, and by the end of it, you won't be angry. Yeah, you can start doing yoga because you have to focus on your body, but also what you're being told to do. I can't think of other things. I can't.
This is funny because, sorry to interrupt you. Yeah. Please don't forget your thought, although I know ADHD.
A squirrel! So you can't see where we're sitting, but as we started talking, there was a magpie going into the house of there. And literally, there's like a British folklore thing that if you see a solo magpie, you salute. Go, good morning, Mr. Magpie. How's your wife and children? And I tell you, it took everything not to do it over the microphone before. So I get what you're saying. But back to yoga.
No, I was going to say to the yoga stuff. I feel like it's like guided meditation where when I do, because I do yoga, I do Pilates as well, but I feel like when I'm actually like, I feel like I need to be on a calm down to actually enjoy it. Like I can't be angry when I start doing it, because I tried, because I remember like when my therapist was like, oh, just try and like just put on some like guided meditation, and then they go like, oh, just now like focus on your breathing. I'm like, just fuck off, or like even with the yoga teachers, I'm like, shut the fuck up.
So I have to force myself. I'm not saying it's easy, but I do have to force myself when I'm not in a good headspace to move into, and the fact that I have to focus because otherwise I'll fuck up. And I think the other thing is as well is, yoga, it's not easy. Everyone thinks it's not, especially when you're a bigger guy as well. You're lifting more. So once the physical side kicks in, that your body is feeling you do, it's sort of hard for me to stay on that thing. And my mind does wander during yoga, usually because there's a pert female bottom in front of me. But that's better than focusing on the anger. My wife fully knows that sometimes you can't, like, even my wife is like, if there's an attractive young 20-year-old in front of me whose arse is meters away from my face, I can't help but look. And that helps me calm down as well.
But you see, this is the thing as well, where like, and then this like self-hatred kicks in on in my situation. But I'm like, like you said, because I'm also like, I'm a big person, right? I'm a big guy, so I sometimes can't do a stretch properly. I'm like, oh, you, like, I start like swearing at myself, and I'm like, oh, you're just such a fucking like, piece of shit. Da, da, da. And then I'm like, okay, no, let's rewind, let's calm down. And then again, it's difficult, and like sometimes I got into this bit where I think I only heard it like a year or so ago, where it was like, sometimes if something doesn't work, don't be afraid to stop. And like that kind of helped me reframe my brain in such a way that I'm like, what, again, I can be like mid workout and like, this is not working. And I'm just like, rather than forcing myself to do it, because I feel like for such a long time, and this is something I actually want to ask you about as well. For such a long time, I had this like black and white mentality where it's like, if you start, you finish. Otherwise, you're like, you don't quit. People don't quit. You have to finish. And then I was like, no, well, if I hate it, why would I continue doing this? So yeah, my question to you. Do you want to add something to
No, carry on.
Yeah, so my question to you was, because you talked about how when was it, like 10 years ago, when you talked about like being diagnosed with
it's 2013.
When did you first notice that you were also, because obviously we talked about like being an angry, being angry in your 20s, so this question might have been answered, but it was like, when did you actually notice that, or like, when did you know that there is something different? There is like, you are sad more often than other people would.
In my teens, essentially. You have to realize, so I was born in 1983, so even though I finished secondary school in 2001, weirdly I'd finished school and I was visiting my school on September the 11th, and I watched the planes go in the sixth form common room with the people. Yeah, it was weird. It was really, we got there, I was visiting my mate Joe, and I was in the sixth form common room I was an adult. I wasn't at school anymore. And we watched the second plane go in. It was mad. Sorry, that's just dropped into me. I realized when I was younger, but mental health and the understanding of mental health was not where it is now. I mean, even now it's not great, but it wasn't good. Because I was raised by two very caring and supportive people, but they were boomers. They were, raised by people that you get on with it. You get what they'll be kind and they listen to your pain and everything. I get wonderful thing, but their default wasn't go to therapy. And they did support when I did want to go to therapy, but it wasn't really what was done. And there's also this attitude of like, what have you got to be sad about? Not from them, but from society as a whole. My parents were great with all that. And then I go through patches of being happy and sad and being all over the place. And I just sort of got on with it. And then over time, I was realizing even though these wonderful things were happening, I had this sort of like dread that I always felt, or this, when you're in an elevator and it goes down suddenly, that drop in your stomach. I had that a lot. And I was doing these like high stress jobs, working in hostels and bars and then all this stuff. And then 2013, I had a breakdown. It was literally, I had a mental breakdown. I wasn't enjoying my job at the time. I had two very young, I had a baby girl on the way, and I had my son who was a toddler, and I was dealing with a lot. But what happened was I would go into work. I went into work this one day. I literally walked through the door and I just passed out. I just collapsed.
Holy shit,
dropped.
Man.
And it kept happening. I'd be out and my legs would just go. I'd just drop. And they did scans and everything. And I was off work for like 2 months. And like I couldn't do much outside the house because we wouldn't know if I'd do it. I'd fall or what have you.
Yeah.
And with hindsight, I think it was definitely mental health, obviously, but I think there was probably a virus in there as well. But mental health was a massive part of it. And while I was off, I just one day realized, right, I'm depressed. Like I've been like this for years, and this explains. And I voiced how I felt because I already had this Huffington Post thing, and it was that point that I then voiced that, and then I got the full diagnosis, and I started seeing therapists and all that. And I also started. I think they tried sertraline, but it didn't really work out for me. And then not long after that, not long, it was about a year after that, because I was terrified of drugs as in antidepressants, because sertraline didn't work. And then about a year after that, I got on citalopram, which I take to this very day. And that allowed me to level out, because it's an SSRI. It gave me the serotonin to be able to step back. And again, I don't think, and antidepressants aren't for everyone. I'm an advocate for them because they've worked for me and I've seen them work for lots of people, but it doesn't work for everyone. And each one doesn't, there's people I know who love sertraline but can't get on with citalopram. And I know people like me who are, the other way around. But I don't think I could have got the clarity to come out of that place without citalopram. So that was about a year later that I was getting therapy and stuff, but the citalopram was sort of the last bit that allowed me to sort of live my life properly.
Interesting, because I've been on sertraline at the beginning, and then I was on like such a high dose of sertraline because it just didn't work. And then my doctor, my GP at the time, was just like, oh, let's just go higher, let's go higher. And I went to 150 a day, and it kind of, that's the year that I told you about when I was in London. I was like, oh, I'm just miserable all the time. That was 1 year of 150 milligrams of sertraline, where I was just like I felt like more dead than alive. Like that's the thing, because this is one of the things at the time. The problem was that the year before, I was struggling more and more with like the suicidal ideations, and I was basically like again, after I was speaking with doctors and everything, they were like, "Oh, I'm more and more of a risk to myself." So they were like, "Oh, let's just like go on sertraline because then at least you're like not gonna have those spikes, you know." And yeah, and then they this is the thing, it worked for that, but that's because the whole year I think I felt like more dead than alive. Like I remember like I'd have people I don't know, cry next to me, and I'd be like, oh, I feel nothing. And then I have people, you know, like bursting. And this was actually quite the hard thing doing stand up, because it was hard to like gauge audiences and understand audiences, because all I was like, okay, you're laughing, but what does that like? I feel, you know, when you do a gig and you're like, oh, I feel good about myself, or sometimes it doesn't go well and you're like, oh, I need to work on these things. To me, it was more of a, I don't really care.
It's that's the problem, because these things don't just work on their own.
Yeah.
It isn't just, well, I don't think therapy just works on its own without you putting in the work in the back end on yourself. And again, it's the same with drugs, that they don't work on their own unless you commit to feeling better or working better. I've had suicidal ideation for years, and I think it's hard for people to understand who've never had it, that it's like a fantasy, but it's somewhat comforting because you want peace is essentially what you're after. And that idea of like ending it is that it'll be quiet, it'll be peaceful. You don't have to feel the way you're feeling. There's a recording artist called Ray. She's incredible voice. Someone described her as Amy Winehouse with vocal training. Like she does big band stuff. She's stunning voice. She's star's just rising, but she's got this song called Genesis, and she's very big on that. She had substance misuse issues and depression, all that. And there's a line where she says, "I don't want to die, but I don't want to be alive." Or I've messed that up, but essentially it's like, I don't want to live, but I don't. I don't want to experience all this, but I don't want to kill myself, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I get that. I've been there. And some days it's like the same thing of like, when you're having a hard life, you're like, I'm just going to fucking move to another country, or I'm just, but like when life's, no, but like when you've got an established life, you're like, fuck it, I'm going to go. It's that hiding, which is, it's part of who, it's fight or flight. It's who we are as a species. And I think the problem with mental health is, and it's going to remain the problem, is they do not understand enough yet about how heads work and all this. People who need SSRIs like me, I definitely have a deficiency of serotonin that the pills help, stay in my system, that makes it manageable. And it's like, I still feel sad because I'm on the right dosage. I've had to up, I've had to down. I think I'm on 30 milligrams at the moment. That seems to be quite good. But sometimes it's impossible to cheer up with that, and you can't put the work in. So you get the SSRIs, or you get any other kind of antidepressant that I don't understand. It gets to a point where you're like, right, now I can handle things, but I've still got to put the work in. I think the trap I think some people fall into is they do one thing and they think that's it. That's going to fix them. And, we live in a fairly depressing world, as well as a wonderful world. And the way I describe it to my kids sometimes is when they're sad because some little prick has called them a name or done something thoughtless that they'd never do themselves. I say this thing to them where I'm like, look, you're very intelligent, both intellectually and emotionally. Because of that, you can see all the colors of the world. You can see the most beautiful things. You can have an understanding of art, film, music. The unfortunate side effect of that is that when people are shitty, you smell the shit. You feel it because you feel. And the problem is, you have to, as you grow as an adult or a child, you have to find the way to navigate life without letting everything crush you, because it's really easy to just depress you all listening to my shit. But I think sometimes it's whataboutery is the worst thing for people with mental health. And that's similar. I've gone on a tangent, but stay with me. So it's like when you talk about like third world problems or first world problems. I don't like that, because it's like it's minimizing when you've got pain. And it's much like when you talk about stand up or talk about anything you do, it's about being realistic with yourself. Yeah, it's like, you and I are sitting in a nice flat now, but there are people in Syria living in rubble, right? But you can still be pissed off if your windows are leaking, or if it's cold when it shouldn't be, or as it is today, it's grey, and there's no point of doing whataboutery in that way. But if you say internally, I'm sad because this is, but it's fixable, or I can do something for myself to cheer myself. I can look at this realistically. Yes, there are people worse off than me, but I'm sad and I'm annoyed about something, and that's fine. But don't let it affect your whole life. See what I mean? I've kind of gone off on a weird tangent.
No, but it makes, again, I can see the logic behind it, because I also feel like sometimes, again, this is the thing where, like, again, nothing is, again, it's not such a, again, like, black and white shouldn't be the way of, like, visualizing or like understanding things, because I agree that sometimes I work out with stuff like, what, I'm in a much better, like, I'm much more fortunate than other people. I try to think like that sometimes when I'm down, and it kind of works. It's like, or like, look, for example, I'm like, oh, I don't have a job, or like, I'm struggling with money, but at least I have all these things sorted, at least, like, so I've been there. But then I also agree that sometimes when, I also agree that I'm allowed to feel the way I feel, because this is the thing. And I can't remember who I was talking with, but I think it was on a podcast, on a previous episode, where it was like, again, okay, yeah, there are problems, there are people, again, like, starving in some other parts of the world, but you have to also be, it's not selfish to be, well, but this is it's not affecting me directly as much as the situation that I'm in. Like, okay, I'm aware of it, I'm trying to be, again, I'm being mindful of it. If I can help, I will help. But the fact that I'm pissed about something that's happened to me right now makes sense, because, again, it's impacting me directly.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people beat themselves up for the thoughts in their head. And, our brains are massive computers. Things are going to pop in there that aren't nice, aren't good. But it's whether or not you believe them, or you're just flights of fancy, And I think the problem in the world today that I think has a big impact on mental health is, like you're saying, everyone is very black and white. But also, everyone is telling everyone how to think. Don't do that. Don't get that pronoun wrong. Don't minimize the rights of the workers. Don't do that. And I'm a proud socialist, ally LGBTQ plus
socialist.
Yeah, Jewish socialist. Who cares?
That's weird. Not joking.
But like, and I'm obviously not. And if someone's listening, going, "Oh, look, it's another 40-year-old white guy complaining about pronouns," I'm not at all. What I'm saying is, I think people of our generation are feeling, from Gen Z or whatever they're fucking called, when they go, "Get it right, get the pronoun right," and it's like, yo, firstly, this is new to us, and it does take an intellectual leap. I fully support everyone's right to be whatever they say they are, but give me an opportunity to get it right, and I'm going to make mistakes, and it's not going to be something that I do deliberately. We were talking about Kate Butch, who I respect so much as a professional, and I was sort of censoring myself or saying he, she, because I don't know what they want to be referred to as. I'm not doing it because I'm societal pressure. I'm doing it because I want to be respectful.
Yeah.
But all the time, you've got people on socials or outside sort of shouting, "Don't do this, don't do that." And it's hard in your brain to find a place where you're not going to feel like shit if you get something wrong.
Do you not find with this? Because my theory behind this is that there is so much anger, that's misdirected. Because, again, it's like, oh, well, there has been a lot of oppression, towards people from the LGBTQIA plus community for like decades of, again, like being mistreated. But then it's almost like, oh well, someone who wasn't even living then now it's angry at someone who probably had nothing to do with the, with the attacks, with the hate crime, anything as such. Although again, sometimes it can be, because again, like, you can see a lot of like bigotry nowadays. Well, you can see it from fellow Gen Zs to millennials to boomers to whatever other,
Presidents.
yeah, to presidents, which is again fine, but you have to take it on a case-to-case basis. But then when I see like all this like misdirected anger, I'm kind of like, you in one hand I feel like you need a hug, but then in the other hand I'm like,
You need a slap. You need to wake up to yourself. Look, I would be a fucking idiot if I was to deny how hard it is for someone from that community day to day. My son is gay. He's happy for me to say that on here. He's out and proud. So I try and learn every day about, what it's like to be him. And he's had some issues with that, with people being horrible because of that. What I'm saying is that society at the moment, on both sides, it's not just these Gen Zs, and it is some of these right-wing idiots as well. Everyone is screaming at everyone else. And the problem is that is not going to get stuff done. You're just going to embolden either side. And it's making us more divided. And I think that I can empathize why people are angry. But it seems to me that it's not productive to getting us to where we want to be. Because then you get the reactions from these Donald Trumps who then say there's only two genders and all this. I mean, my theory about, I'm putting my neck out on the line here. So this is just a theory. I love everyone. But my theory is the reason the trans community is very loud and very shouty is that a lot of these women who were not assigned female at birth, because they used to be men, they're very entitled. Because our gender's quite entitled, right? And there's a lot of white men in there who are used to hearing what they want to hear all the time and having that privilege. So they're really agog. Oh, what? Now I'm being picked on? I mean, I'm sure that is the case for some. It's not all. There is still horrendous bigotry. But, there's been cases of like the gay community like aren't happy with the trans community because they feel like that they're sort of benefiting off all their fight and then creating new things about like bathrooms and stuff, which I'm not going to get into because it's such a difficult, nuanced and hard to understand situation, because I'm not a woman, and that's the women are the ones who are the most affected by it, be they assigned at birth women or are they women now. And then it becomes conflated, it becomes all this stuff. And I just think that every side needs a bit of empathy, more so the right wingers, because obviously they're cruel, they're unnecessarily cruel with it. But again, I think all this screaming is not going to get anything done, and it's just going to make people depressed because people want to be nice. I truly believe that at their core, people just want people to get on. Yeah, people want to just live their life, enjoy their life, be friendly, get on. But when you're feeling like guilty because you've not expressed support in the right way, it's going to come back on you. Do you know what I mean? It's going to come back on I'm so going to get cancelled for this. Essentially, I think everyone should just calm down and will come to the table calm and respectful. And I think allow people to make these mistakes. But the same token, you have to push. It's a difficult balance.
Yeah. I don't see why that's cancelable. If I'm being,
I am saying I'm an idiot. I'm a straight white man. But my take from what I've seen is that there's too much screaming and fighting, and there needs to be a more sensible approach. That there'll be fighting as part of it, and I'm not saying you won't have to fight for these rights, because people have and continue to fight for rights. But if all you're doing is screaming, it's not going to win over the other side. I mean, you know,
this is the thing. You can't expect for someone to, because this is how I see it. And sorry to interrupt you. Please finish. Oh no, I was going to say that the way I see it is kind of like, you when you're giving the other side reasons to keep on hating you, then obviously again that's like the best excuse. Like when your behavior it kind of like proves the point that the other party wants to showcase, then what do you expect from it? And then I agree with you. I feel, but this is the thing also, like what happened to like, respectful like debates. Like you remember, like you read these books about like the Greeks, or like like, oh, look, Jews and friggin' what, in the Roman Empire and stuff like this, where they were like, well, we will be like intellectual people gathering together, not agreeing with each other, but then still being able to live. Well, now it almost feels like, you're almost forced into like, oh, I believe in this, I'm just going to shove it down your throat whether you like it or not. Because if anything, that I almost feel like sometimes, and this is where you see so many things that are happening that could have not happened, but they're only happening out of spite. Because one side is like, oh, if you keep calling me, if you keep like using derogatory names about like trans people, then I'm just gonna be even, I'm gonna do this thing just to like spite you. But then the other side is like, oh, so you're, again, I don't know, doing, I don't know what example to give again to not go, but then then the other side is like, oh, you see, I told you this is wrong because look, here is an example. Here is like a fucking creep who was using women's toilets. And I'm like, yeah, but that guy has nothing to do with the trans community anyway. But then the problem is that you're almost like you're feeding each other. You're feeding this anger.
It's Ouroboros. It's the snake eating its own tail. Look at America and look at how that last election went, right? Trump won because the left, people who you and I have very similar politics to, we might not agree with everything the Democrats do, but essentially, if we're in the States, that's probably where we'd sit, or at least more that way than the right.
Yeah.
Hypothetically, we'll just say we're not, you and I, we have some views, or I'm talking for you, but I won't. I am what I would call like a socio-capitalist. I believe in the capitalism's here and can exist in a way that's not arse raping every single worker, but by the same token, we need to look after the people who need it. That sort of thing, right? So you look at America, and what they did is Kamala and her co essentially played it like, you be fucking stupid to vote for Donald Trump. You be an idiot and you're evil because you hate trans people and gay people and puppies and all that shit. And Donald Trump just came out and went, guys, I'm great. I'm going to make all your lives better. And of course they vote for him because they were being told by people that they're fucking dumb, that they're ignorant and hateful and all that, right? And this goes back to mental health because that's all we're hearing in society at the moment. Now, I truly believe that when someone says they are not the gender they were assigned with at birth, I believe them. I want to believe them. I want to support them. Same gay, straight, asexual, anything. And I think that is important. But if you turn around and demonize people for making mistakes, and there is a difference between being hateful and making mistakes. I'm not saying if someone's walking around going, fucking trannies, that's awful. That's not what I want. But when it comes to a debate like over toilets, like J.K. Rowling has been demonized, and I know she has said some not great stuff. But if we go back to the core of what started her thing, she's a woman who suffered sexual assaults and violence from a man, right? And that's like known, that's fact. So that's changed her view, understandably so. And it's the core of this like toilet thing. And the problem is both sides conflate it in a different way. You've got one side who are acting like all trans women are predators, and then you have the other side who are sort of minimizing the actual risk to women of this. Because let's be realistic, the biggest killer of men, heart disease or suicide. Biggest killer of women, men. So of course there's going to be women who the idea of a trans person sharing their bathroom is a scary prospect. But then what happens is this argument things where it's like, you're a bigot gammon if you think this. Or, you're a woke liberal if you think that. No, there is an actual, honest, realistic debate over this situation that is based in evidence and fear. I'm not talking about gender evidence. I'm not getting into that because truthfully, it's not my business and it's not my understanding. I'm going to take at face value what someone says about themselves. But the toilet issue, I can understand, and I truthfully, I'm not landing either way because I just think people should be safe and happy, and I'm not I've not got a dog in the fight. Yeah. If a trans man came into a men's bathroom, I got no issue with it because it's the bathroom. You've got to use it because, the risk is different for men.
Yeah, that's true.
But I can totally understand why cis women, even non-cis women, would be worried about a trans woman coming into a bathroom. Now, why have I gotten to this when we talk about mental health? What I'm trying to get on at this is there's an innate fear that has been bred into us through social media of getting it wrong. The idea of like making a mistake is terrible. And then on top of that, when I talked about cancelling, because I'm talking about a difficult subject and voicing opinions that won't agree, people who I'm friends with or who have very similar views to me might not agree with. And all I can say to that is nothing is based in hate. Some of it's like a guess, and some of it's just what I've witnessed. I'm losing my train of thought. The thing is, people are also worried that even if they make a little mistake, they'll get cancelled. They'll be doxxed and all that shit. And we've seen it happen to people who have voiced things. Look, there's been some real villains, Cosby, who have been destroyed because they're evil and they've done some terrible things. But then there are people who have made stupid mistakes and not been given a chance to make up for those mistakes. I think the only big example I can think of someone who did something a bit naughty but has been allowed to come back is James Gunn. Because if you remember, he got fired from Guardians of the Galaxy 3 because old tweets he made when he worked for Chroma. Yeah. He said some awful stuff that he said, I don't believe any of that stuff. I was a provocateur. I was being an arsehole. It's not reflective of what I believe now. And it's awful. And I stand by that it's awful. And I'm sorry. He sat back, took his licks. And then because he was genuinely a nice guy and he had enough people around him who believed in him, he was, came back. And every so often someone mentions it. But then you've got things like people getting cancelled because they're sticking with their people or they're this and that. And I think there's this innate fear now that any mistake you make could mean the end of your life, could mean that you're torn away from everything you love just because you've had a negative thought or you've made a mistake and what have you. And I think people are probably going to listen to this and think, oh, you're being catastrophizing. I'm like, well, but if you are someone who suffers from mental health issues, which a lot of us do, it's sometimes terrifying that you can just say what you're thinking or ask a question and you be lambasted for it.
It's true. Yeah. Again, I agree because I feel like this was a huge thing when I kind of like started to like shift my way around, politics and views, when I was like, oh, you can't ask questions because if you ask, again, it wasn't something else. And I was like, hey, but actually that's a valid question. Like what happened there? And it's like, no, don't ask this. Because if you ask, you're a bad person. And I'm like, no, I just want to know. And it's like, no, you only haters want to know. And I'm like, no, I'm genuinely curious. And then I was like, oh, you know what? Fuck this. So then let me go and like find out what happened. And
so I'm going to open another can of worms that I'm less worried about getting cancelled for. And I'm going to mention Jeremy Corbyn.
Oh, God.
Right. So both Levy and I are Jewish. And look, my history with the Labour Party was my dad has been a Labour Party member for like 50 odd years. I remember leafleting in the 80s with my dad for Neil Kinnock. Yeah. They were my party. They were so important. And actually, in the 70s, when my dad started Labour, there was a massive Jewish presence. Like a lot of, refugees from World War II or children of refugees from World War II believed in Labour and believed in it. Then Jeremy Corbyn comes along, who everyone saw as the Great White Hope. And there were all these Jews who were like, yo, this guy's got some problematic stuff. But everyone was like, you need to forget that.
Yeah.
You need to forget that because he's the thing. And it's like, yeah, but, you know, some of the stuff, you know, there's videos and you can find them out there of him like Iranian TV of them going, Israel is the murder of the West. We should kill them all. And he's just sitting there nodding. He's not saying yes, but he's allowing it to be said. And then he's on stage with like fucking terrorists, guys who've like killed Jews or called for the killing of Jews. And everyone's wondering why the Jews are like, yo, there's a problem here. And that was the point where Jewish people were like, well, fuck the left. They don't care about us. And and it wasn't just like the odd little thing. It was a catalogue of things that allowed to spread in this party. And then everyone was like, oh, now you're punishing him from stuff going on in the party that's not him. I'm like, yeah, he's a leader. That's sort of the point, that he is the buck stops. To the point now that I had a friend who he passed away now. We actually made up after this, but we got into an argument after Corbyn was ousted because he said something and I shared it and he went, oh, he's irrelevant. Why are you still going on about this? And I'm like, because it was a threat to my racial identity. You know, if I was a person of color and it was a situation like that, you wouldn't be asking me that. You'd be wondering.
True.
So, you know, I've had the heartbreak as well in the last however many years of a group that I aligned myself with, who I believed in, abandoning me because there was so much fragrant anti-Semitism. In fact, one of the funniest things that happened to me linked to this is I went to see The Force Awakens. It was like the third time I was going. And I was at the O2 cinema on Finchley Road. And I'm with my brother-in-law, who recently joined the IDF. He is of Israeli. His dad's Israeli, but he went to serve because he believes in it and wants to support the country, and he's an Israeli citizen. I'm very proud of him. We're not going there to attack people, but it's, if you understand, you understand. Anyway, we're standing there, and he's looking at me, and suddenly I make a face like I'm going to punch someone. And it's because Ken fucking Livingston walked in and he sat like right in front of me. So for the whole film, I was just staring daggers into Mr. Oh, Hitler was a Zionist. And again, people don't get why that hate is there, because it's like they're evil. The stuff they're saying is just insidious that we felt for years. So again, people wonder about why Jewish people at the moment especially have this mental health crisis. It's not just because of what's going on in Israel. It's what we've been feeling for years, this fight or flight. And I think both of us have talked about it off the podcast at length about how that fear is there as well. It's this world we're living in. It seems like, and look, I'm not saying Jews are the only racial group that live in fear. That would be ridiculous. And it sounds stupid that a guy who looks as white as I am is part of a racial minority, but it's true. And again, it's that guilt around that feeds into everything. So I think part of the big issue is what I'm getting out of everything I've just said is that the reason I came to a point where I had to internalize my own journey and go make the decision, I don't want to feel like this all the time, is because I knew the outside world wasn't going to fucking help me feel any better.
Yeah. Sadly, that's true. But, oh my God, there is so much I want to talk about, but I know we got a show to go to. Before we wrap it up, I wanted to ask you about the article they wanted to bring up.
Right, yeah. So I wrote a few articles on Huffington Post. So you can search on Huffington Post. Some of them are brilliant. Some of them are sad, shit. But I wrote 3 that I'm very proud of. The first one was I suffer from depression, which was me coming out. And then I wrote 2 about suicide. One was essentially about how I get it when people kill themselves. And it was mainly empathizing with people who get to that point, do it or don't, but also trying to understand from the other side when you have someone who does that. And then I did a follow-up to that because someone in my life took their own life, and it was like an open letter to them. The 2 suicide articles are the thing I'm most proud of out with of my marriage and children, because I had people contact me directly to say I was considering doing this, but after reading what you wrote, I'm seeking help. I had quite a few of those. And I've never checked up on those people because I don't want like I replied to them and was very nice. But that meant the world to me. And it goes back to what I was saying about the screaming. I was empathetic. I was like, it's not stupid. I know why you're doing it. I understand why you would feel that way. But it's, in my eyes, it's never the answer. There's always a way through it. And it was kind of nice to take how I felt, be honest about it for the world around me, but also give back to people. And I think we didn't really get onto what I'm doing with comedy now, but after this blackout on Thursday and the world as is, I've decided to really lean into being Jewish, joke about being Jewish and what it's like and the realities of it without lecturing people. I'm not talking about Middle East politics. In fact, I make a joke about people making a grimace when I say the words Middle and East. But I really want to get my comedy to a point where I can talk about things like that lightly, but seriously. And I think that's probably where I'm going to end up, as someone who talks about life in general, my own feelings, my own life, but with a humorous slant, because I think that's the way forward. I think if I can only come out with an open heart, there's not really any way I can lose. And if you've listened to this and you've listened to some of the stuff I've said about gender stuff that I don't fully understand, please understand that this is me coming with an open heart and just giving my views. And if someone wants to come to me politely and say, you got this wrong, I'll listen. I'll take it in. If I'm wrong, I will accept I'm wrong. There's a cat. Sorry, a cat just jumped on us. I want to be entertaining and useful. That's where I want to go. So there you go.
Well, I'll send me the link for the articles, because I'll put them on the bio of the episode. And look, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. And I'll have you back on soon, hopefully, so that we can uncover everything else. And unless you've got anything. Oh yeah, please let us know, where are you mostly active? So
I'm mainly active on Instagram at just Matt Zitron. I'm on Twitter at Matt Zitron. I don't go on that much. Instagram's the main place that I do it. I'm crap with socials because I'm almost 42. I'm actually trying to employ my son to do my TikTok because I know people. I really want the Chinese government to come see me. But yeah, just Matt Zitron on Instagram. But and come and see me at some shows. I try and be funny. I love doing comedy. It is what keeps me going. That and cats. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you for listening and having me.
Thank you, Matt. Take care. And Sarma is here to distract us, so we gotta go. Bye.
Bye, kitty.
Right. So, how was it? Did you enjoy, or did you not enjoy? I hope you did, because we definitely had a good time recording this. Now, once again, check out the bio to see the bio of the episode to see Matt's social media handle, and you'll find a link to his to the papers that we were talking about during the podcast episode. Now, that's it from me for this week, and from me, Pickle and Sarma. Thank you for listening, and until next week, goodbye and stay skillful.